All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's May 12th, 2021. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, and that means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your team and showing them the ropes. So if that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format's very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time and make yourself comfortable like this guy. And if you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office-hours. We host these calls every week. We'll automatically post a video recording of this session to our office hours YouTube channel. So if you enjoy the content and want to support us, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. It helps us a great deal. We'll also follow up with an email that you can share with your team. And with that said, let's kick it off. Only have not that many announcements today. One of the ones it was announced actually, I think a week or so ago. I missed it last week. Was Atlassian has come out with a response, I guess you could say, to Azure DevOps, which is integrating or built on top of the Jira platform and ties together, most notably, deployments into your Jira workflows. I haven't had a chance to kick the tires or even see it. I know, Andy, you were going to go take a look at it on behalf of Cloud Posse. Did you get a chance to look at that at all yet?
I just started scratching the surface, and I don't want to speak too soon. I still want to dig into a little bit deeper, but it seems like they've just took existing functionality integrations and set them to default on your projects and said, here you go. I'm hoping there's more to it than that, but so far that's what I've been seeing.
Okay. I guess I thought it was nice, maybe under releases here, you can see some more timing information. Also, release velocity was one of the things that they called out here, so you can see how long it takes from conception to delivery. And that's cool. Seems like a lot of companies are coming out and tackling this specific problem right now, trying to surface your release velocity together with your project management. I forget the other company, I just saw some acquisition. Well, the other thing I briefly skipped over there is, if you are a contractor or interested in contracting related to DevOps, you should definitely reach out to Cloud Posse. We always have lots of interesting projects with our customer engagements. If you want to learn more about what that's about, head over to cloudposse.com/jobs or reach out to Andy Miguel in our Slack team, and he can answer a lot of your questions about working at Cloud Posse. The other announcement here is this AWS Incident Manager. All I can say is it took you long enough. I'm really surprised that Amazon hadn't come out with this sooner, but this was just announced. This is Amazon's response to PagerDuty, OpsGenie, etc. Finally, a way to do escalations within the platform and manage your incidents. It supports SMS, phone. I didn't see any mention of a mobile app. That is a pretty nice way of working with these tools when you're on call and not by your desk and need to log into AWS to acknowledge something that was really stuck. So I hope there is a mobile app component to this. And it's built or integrated into the Amazon Systems Manager, where they've been adding a lot of other functionality and investing in things like, the secure shell that was added like end of last year, and console access, which was just added about a month ago. So it's cool. It's cool that more of this stuff's coming out. Anyone else look into the incident management capability yet? I mean, okay. It was announced 2 days ago, so.
I read a couple of things on it, and I just made a couple of notes here, but it did say that you can acknowledge and engage in incidents via SMS, phone calls, AWS chatbot, and you can actually execute system manager like automation runbooks in response to those things automatically. And then it also says that it has a synchronization with Jira, Service Desk, and ServiceNow, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah. The yeah, I mean, I guess the AWS chatbot it would be a stopgap measure. We haven't used it at all at Cloud Posse yet. Anybody using the AWS chatbot stuff? Or
I used it.
You used it? How was it?
Yeah, I used it in a previous life. It's actually it's pretty good. You can build it to do some pretty interesting things. But like anything else in this business, you have to planning it out and understanding what you want to do and mapping it all out is the majority of the time, not the actual implementation of the thing, you know.
Yeah, developing the opinion on what and how to do it is the hard. Yeah.
But SMS, I think, is also fairly like useful here, where it'll actually send you a text message and you can respond that way as well. So
it is. It's not my favorite UI.
No, but it's better than logging into AWS. That was my only point.
It is, yeah. Yeah. It is better than logging to AWS. Cool. Anything else anyone else has to add to that? All right. And who was it? It was I think it was Andrew pointed out that Helm 4 planning has started in the very formal way of a plan to plan and how to plan. But that's what we can look forward to, I guess, is the next big steps in what Helm is going to look like. Really curious what's in store for it. I haven't been following the roadmap at all for Helm these days. So anybody have anything exciting related to Helm? All right. And the last thing, this was, I was excited about it until about 30 minutes before the call when I saw apparently Mark's response. But Nitro Code, RB, he's part of the community, pretty active contributor. We were bit by this earlier this week. You know, the data source for template file has been deprecated, and no new releases are coming out for that. So we wanted to try and replace that using the template file function, and we realized, wait, this is only operating literally on files, so we can't do it based on strings. So it seemed like an easy enough thing. RB opened up the PR to add support for it. And if we look at the corresponding issue here, apparently Mark basically says, yeah, this was by design. We don't like the experience of using templates in HCL due to the nasty escaping semantics of like $ and $, and it's just not a pleasant developer experience. So they deliberately decided not to support the Terraform template syntax in HCL. I get it, but it sucks when you deprecate one function or one method and provide a replacement that isn't even remotely comparable. So we would appreciate an upvote though. Either way, it looks like we've gotten a little bit of love so far. So let's see what happens. We can create a movement. All right, so that's all I had for announcements. Anybody else have any interesting announcements they caught this week? Kubernetes, Terraform, AWS, cool open source projects.
Was it this week that the Cloudfront function got out, or it was last week?
I think it was last week. I think it was Matt Calhoun brought it up, but yeah, it's worth bringing up again. So Cloudfront has released support for something eerily similar to Lambda Edge, except for these have a much more reduced scope and must execute fully within 1 millisecond. We were wondering, like, does that mean we can't even do a regex in this thing? Because 1 millisecond is a pretty aggressive benchmark. Has anyone kicked the tires on this yet?
I looked at it a bit. It seemed like mostly for a patch for lack of like if you have like a weird load balancing where you want like certain paths to match up to certain other objects. I'm guessing it's mostly for that. At least that's what I'm trying to use it for.
Yeah, it was pretty rigid what you could match in terms of paths before. So this is probably the main use case for it. Yeah. Any other announcements? All right. Looks like no questions were posted today in office hours. Let's see here. And going back throughout the week, doesn't look like any questions were really promoted. As well as in our chat, doesn't look like any questions there. So it's an open mic. Anybody have questions?
Actually, I do. I do have a question. Hi, Eric, and hi, everybody. So that's cool. That's cool. We got an open question. So I'm working with Atmos at the moment, and I'm wondering, because the company is using Codefresh for the CICD.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how does Cloud Posse do it? What's the Cloud Posse way there? I've checked out the space lift, but maybe you can go a little bit deeper on how the workspaces works and at what time Atmos settings are forwarded to the space lift. Those are environment variables, right?
Yeah. Let me talk about that. So what we have really is this stack configurations, YAML stack configuration that Marcin is talking about. So if we go to GitHub, Cloud Posse, and pull up space lift here, I think. Yeah, so this is the stack config that I'm talking about. It's the same one that we use in Atmos. So if you go to docs.cloudposse.com, we have under, I think, concepts, is it? Yeah, an explanation of the stack configuration in more detail. And it's just a schema, right, for describing your infrastructure in YAML. So it's all in one place. Now, we created Atmos as we first started with Atmos, right? So we needed a way to use or consume this YAML config and run Terraform with it. So that was kind of the birth of Atmos. But then there's continuous delivery. And we weren't looking for continuous delivery. We were just looking for a way to run Terraform automatically on merge to main or production or whatever the default branch is. So what we were able to do in that case was we just re-implemented support for the stack configuration in native Terraform. So that's when we go over here to Cloud Posse and we search, if I search for stack, the Terraform YAML stack config, this is our Terraform module that consumes and parses a stack configuration. So now that we have that, what we did is we just implemented the same strategy for continuous delivery in Spacelip. Now, if we think about this, this is quite radical compared to how most companies are doing continuous delivery for Terraform. Most companies, when they do continuous delivery for Terraform, will use whatever their existing platform is. So let's say it's GitHub Actions or Jenkins or Codefresh. And then they just call Terraform straight up based on like some pull request event or some branch event, like a push commit to main. And then they ask, oh, and that's pretty easy, right? You can just very easily call Terraform on your merge commit to main, and however you handle your values, that's fine. It just applies those changes. And then the next thing is, well, I want this other thing to apply when like I want my, I'm just talking hypothetically, I want my subnet component or module to trigger after my VPC component is updated. How do I do that with GitHub Actions, Codefresh, Jenkins, and all that other stuff? It gets pretty complicated very quickly when you start realizing these interdependencies. The other thing you want to start thinking about is, how are you doing policy enforcement? So how do you maybe auto approve something which has only updates but no deletions or creations? That might be a type of policy you want. Or auto approve something where the change set is very small, so it's maybe quite minimal. Or even like, how are you even doing approvals? Like if you're using GitHub Actions, it's not trivial to do an approval process on the changes before they get applied by some step. So what we decided was we wanted to use a specific purpose-built platform for policy enforcement, approval steps, that was highly flexible, entirely configurable by code. And we started with Terraform Cloud for doing that. And we implemented a Terraform module for that using stack config. But then we moved on, but we kind of, I'd say almost graduated from that. And we looked for other alternatives because we just felt like our hands were tied too much with the Terraform Cloud platform. What we ended up working mostly with now is Spacelift. And they're a relatively young startup, but they've raised 6 million now. They've been featured on TechCrunch. I think they're raising more rounds and been growing very rapidly. And they're basically a policy engine on GraphQL and Terraform State and GitHub push events. So what our module does, our Cloud Posse Spacelift module does, is it will set up, it makes so much more sense if I could show you a live environment right now. I can't show you a live environment because they're all customer environments and that's not kosher. But what this module will do, maybe that's what we should do, Andy or Carrie, is we should just add some screenshots here that have been blurred out, so it's a little bit easier to describe it. But what you get is what Spacelift, it's confusing because Spacelift calls them stacks. We call them components. Terraform calls them workspaces. So there's a lot of overloaded terminology here just to be aware of. And in Spacelift, this would be like a stack, what we call a component, and what Terraform Cloud calls a workspace. So that's represented on their UI. And when any change happens to this configuration, that's reflected in the UI on Spacelift. And then we can set up relationships. So like when this other component is modified, this one should get triggered. Let's see here. I think I'm increasing the scope of Marcin's question quite a lot here and setting up everything to talk about it. So configuration, where does that live? Well, the short answer is that what we do is when this configuration is changed, there's an administrative workspace running inside of Spacelift that literally consumes this and updates the Spacelift configuration. So Spacelift is fully managed with infrastructure as code and respects this configuration. But the more honest answer is that, well, we ran into some slight limitations with that in how we are doing things. So what we do is we also run, we have a version of our module here that has a feature flag that enriches the continuous delivery experience by calling Atmos. So what we do is before running Terraform init, we call Atmos config to generate the Terraform TF-var files. I don't think I have a succinct way of explaining why we needed to do that. Other than just be aware of that when you're implementing it. So the reason why we're not using Codefresh is the same reason we're not using though GitHub Actions or Jenkins or all this other stuff, is that it's hard to do even with Spacelift. It would be astronomically more difficult to do what we're trying to do with something like Codefresh. Policy-driven framework for triggering projects that can be applied based on certain policies. Those policies are written in Rego. You can see those policies here. For example, here's our global, well, this is an easy one. What's a more advanced one? Push global, I think, yeah. There's a little bit more involved Rego policy that we've written. So what this does is allows you to define the business logic for how to Terraform stuff. Like if you're using TerraGrunt, for example, TerraGrunt has built-in capability like when one project is applied this other project. The Spacelift concept of that is that's a policy. So rather than build that into the tool as an opinionated coordination between two different Terraform projects, instead define that as a policy of when of how things should be applied. And in this case, we took the opinionated route where those policies are automatically applied based on labels to your projects. So simply by adding labels to things, you get this ability to automatically apply different components in your environment. Matt, you know a whole lot more about TerraGrunt than I do. You know a little bit less about Spacelift. I know you haven't been working with it as much, but you might be able to provide or compare and contrast the approach, perhaps. And also to mention, Spacelift supports TerraGrunt too. So they're not mutually exclusive, but there's some overlap.
Yeah, I think specifically with the triggering of dependencies, the TerraGrunt approach is more declarative alongside the code and probably easier to reason about and see like at the code source. But the Spacelift version is much more robust and gives you the ability to do conditionals, to do approvals, to do a lot more things that you would potentially want to do, notifications, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a lot there.
Exactly, and I would say it's non-trivial to develop and come up with Rego policies to do everything I've described, but it is very powerful once you get your head around it. So Martin, that was a long-winded, like partial answer probably to your question. I don't know, did I get at the heart of what you were asking? Like what's the relationship between something like Spacelift and Atmos? You might be muted. So the only other thing I would add to that while we wait for Martin was stack config is really just a format and then a configuration format. And our opinion with this is that any tools can now be designed to operate on it. We can develop a Kubernetes operator that reads the stack configuration and does this in a Kubernetes-centric way. We've written a command line tool we call Atmos that reads the YAML configuration and runs the commands that we've implemented on the command line. Now, we don't want to invest a ton of this in this CLI because we don't want to invest a ton on doing stuff on the command line. So that's why we want to invest more in these integrations with things like a continuous delivery platform, like Spacelift, to then apply the changes in an automated fashion. All right. Well, I think we might have lost Marcin, so we can move on. Any other questions? I see there's something here in the chat. Let me see here.
If you don't mind, I wanted to know if anybody has run like a private module registry, and if they did, how they approach that.
Well, just to mention, there are a number of companies now that offer managed private registries. Spacelift does it, as well as, I believe, why am I drawing a blank? We use them for our Cloud Posse packages. Cloudsmith.
Cloudsmith, yeah.
Yeah, Cloudsmith also offers private registries, but self-hosted, I haven't looked into it. Anybody doing self-hosted private Terraform registries?
Well, I can elaborate a little bit here. That I've written one before that adheres to the registry, all the registry specs in Node, just so that there could be some statistics tracking and a lot of things like that. I think that it depends on what you're trying to do with private registry. Like why are you looking into it, I guess, would be the bigger question. And maybe I can help give you some guidance, because I did a lot of research in this area and did a bunch of proof of concepting for various reasons.
I didn't realize Terraform Cloud registry was also free. So that's interesting. It's still managed, not self-hosted.
Correct.
Yeah, it's like some teams have written some providers, and we want to keep them in-house. And that's basically why I'm curious about that. It's not just like you can put that, like a provider, the final thing somewhere, right? And just pull it. It has a protocol, like you said. So I was curious about that.
Especially for the providers, where it might be talking to your internal service APIs and stuff like that, and not public. So I think I would say I see almost a stronger use case for that. But are you also looking to use it for modules or just for providers?
Well, right now it's providers, but it could be for some modules. Yeah.
Yeah, especially I guess if those modules are using those private providers.
Yeah. Honestly, if you look at the spec for what is required to host a private module registry, it's really not that complicated. There's just a couple of HTTP verbs you have to handle, like on a couple specific endpoints, and the bigger complicated part is how do you authenticate to that registry, and is it only literally available inside your firewall versus, people might be sitting out at their homes, where they need to doing work from home, where they need to download from there, and then authentication becomes a little bit more complicated in that case. But the actual implementation of it is pretty simple to build your own. I mean, it's just a couple of basically what happens is it returns back a URL that you can download something from, from like a source code provider, any of the providers that are supported by Terraform directly under the hood. So it's a pretty small API, but auth is probably your most complicated piece if you look into it. But a hosted version like Cloudsmith that we were talking about would actually probably work for you, because that's token based. So you basically just have to, everyone who needs access to it just has to have that token basically exposed, and it gets sent along in the URL.
Okay, cool. Did you mention you mentioned something initially? Was it like a project or anything that?
It was a private. It was for a company that was going to use it for commercializing modules
Okay.
and being able to track usage and number of downloads and what things are being utilized most, etc. And they were also looking at the authentication side of things as well. So.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Looks like there's something called anthology. Private registry implementation. Has anybody looked at these any of these private registry?
I looked pretty deeply into Citizen at one point. That looked like the most solid one at the time.
Interesting. Yeah, 2 years ago, 3 years ago on this one. I saw the one that apparently Mark was working on was also like 2 years ago. Citizen, looks like Citizen is still being maintained. Commit as recently as 2 months ago. I wonder if it supports providers. Yeah, and a provider registry. So yeah, that looks like the way to go then. Citizen.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other, let's see here, any other questions we got today? See the Zoom chat here. Zoom. These windows are always disappearing. I can't find it.
I started using environments and GitHub Actions. You have to be on the enterprise plan to use that, but like it's pretty good.
Yeah. I am interested in that. We haven't been able to use the environment. Well, we haven't been able to test the approval functionality of environments. Are you using that, Emil?
Yeah, I'm using that for deployment, not for infrastructure, but like for general CICD deployments to production. It's good, and there are some weird thing like in your workflow, every step, but not every step, but like every job needs to be approved, and you can't say like approve the whole workflow, so that's a bit annoying, but it works relatively well otherwise.
Okay.
And if you have like the GitHub Slack integration, now they also posted in the message that they sent on Slack that it needs an approval for a deployment.
Oh,
so.
Is it using like the enriched Slack API or whatever?
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it changes status if someone approves it and everything automatically. So it's pretty good.
That's cool. For those of us not on enterprise, Delivery Bot offers something quite comparable, self-hosted, very easy, simple Node app with a GitHub-like UI. Well, this was actually GitHub here, but what you see up here is not GitHub actually. This is a GitHub-like UI that you self-host and uses GitHub OAuth. We've done a couple of pilots with it, and it has a nice little, kind of pseudo approval process, but it's not based on any GitHub teams or permissions. If you have access to the app, you have access to do an approval. Yeah, I'm really peeved that they released that environment functionality only for enterprise. I can't afford for Cloud Posse to pay the premium to start using that. Well,
it's like $20 per user per month. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not.
SSO. I always bring this up, the SSO tax, but yeah, GitHub is on here. It's 425% more expensive to go enterprise with GitHub. So. All right, what is yes, indeed. Shame. There are worse offenders in here. HubSpot marketing, for example. 6,000% more expensive. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? My dogs are having a field day today.
They're very bothered about the SSO text.
Yeah, that is just crap. I can't take it. All right. Oh, I apologize. It is. I need to run away. Oh wait, no, my wife's taking care of it. All right. Any other questions we can answer today?
I have a question, Eric.
Yeah, fire away, Andy.
So I'm wondering if anybody has a strong opinion for or against having candidates do like a code exercise or
Good one.
or something like that when you're interviewing them. We're having these internal discussions at Cloud Posse, but love to hear some community feedback on that topic.
I'll just say I'll color the waters with my 2 cents on it, why I'm so conflicted. I personally have skipped over every opportunity where they required me to do some coding tests and things like that. I was never good academically in school, and yet I think I've done quite all right. I think it filters out some great candidates, but it also saves everyone a lot of time because there are a lot of people who can also represent themselves very well on interviews, but they turn out to just not be a good fit. It wastes their time, it wastes your time. And look, I hate letting people go. It's the worst thing ever. And I also, feel bad for somebody who's just, thrown off the deep end and can't do well at the job. So I think tests definitely serve a purpose, but I also don't know what is a fair test. And sometimes we have what we call these like contrived examples, which have no bearing in the real world, and are those accurately helping them out? And we've gone through like, should we give candidates a real world example test, like by completing a GitHub issue or problem that we have on one of our pull requests? Well, then I guess technically we should be paying for that. Okay, I guess I can do that. But then it puts so much onus on us to find good candidates, the candidate issues on GitHub to give for that. And 2 candidates won't have the same test, and then that's not fair. So I don't know what is a good example. Matt, I know you have some strong feelings on it.
Yeah, my opinions are are usually quite opposite of Eric's in this. The one thing that we both agree on is that I think we both hate contrived examples and like whiteboard coding and all of that, because that takes into there are so many biases that can happen with that, just because that isn't real world and that isn't how you do your job, and it puts undue stress on you, etc. But some sort of a take-home problem where you can work in your own domain the way that you usually work to accomplish
do they have
a
to
problem.
bring their own Amazon account, or do you give them an Amazon account?
Well, it depends. It depends what it is, but like you can give them access to like, I mean, it's really easy to spin up like an Amazon account, but the question becomes is,
what have you done in your past lives?
I've done things where, so in my most recent past live, the way that we did all of that was, once we narrowed down candidates and thought that they were good from the discussions that we had, we would usually invite that candidate to work for one business day alongside us in there and actually get them to work. So they would be granted access for a day. They would have some problem that was roughly around 6 hours worth of work from our estimate, so that they would also get like a couple of hours Slack and time to ask people and all of that in there. And we would fully say like, hey, it's okay to sacrifice features for this, but try to get something implemented end to end, including like your tests or whatever it is. And then let's review it at the end of the day. And if you have any questions, this is how we normally work, raise an issue in Slack, ping this person, do that, that kind of thing. And then you not only get to test their coding skills, but you get to test like, did they ask for help at the right points? What did they get stuck on? What did they, did they just not ask any questions, and then at the end of the day you were really disappointed with what they came up with, et cetera. So it gives you a lot more insight into how that person works, but it takes more investment for sure. You don't want to do that with 100 candidates by any means.
Yeah.
I can speak to what we do at field level here. It's more on the software development side. We really haven't figured out what a good pattern is for DevOps hires, but on the software development side, we have like a small little exercise that we ask the person to do. We ask them to time box it to 4 hours and what to prioritize on, what not to prioritize on. And we mainly use that as a jumping off point to start the interview, the more technical interview, right? So the first half of that interview is really just spent them giving themselves a PR, like doing a PR as if it was like, reviewing it's a code review as if it was a PR, and they have to walk through what they did, why they made those choices, that kind of stuff. And we found it as a really nice tool to kick off specific technical discussions versus like, making some weird contrived example on the spot where they have to think on the fly. Like, this is code that you wrote in your comfort of your own home, all that kind of stuff. Like, you should be able to walk through and explain why you did certain things. And we're very, very, very strict on the like, listen, only spend 4 hours on it. If you don't finish something, that's fine. We'll just talk about it in generalities. But, we don't want someone to spend 12 hours working on some exercise on their own time. That's not fair.
Yeah.
Right. Then further down the process, if they get past that, and then also like all our kind of huddle interviews where we're doing, kind of like culture fit and stuff like that, then we do what Matt was talking about, where it's a full day immersion kind of thing, where we have a setup task that we know how much time it takes, what they should kind of like be able to accomplish stuff, and we fully pay them, handsomely for that day. So they basically take a day off of their, take PTO and get paid double dip for the day, essentially. And that's kind of our last option. It's like, listen, can you work with this person for a day? Do they ask questions at the right time? All that stuff that Matt was talking about. So far that's working very well for us, but it's been working on the software engineering side, right? Developer, I'm having trouble figuring out how to do a similar thing for DevOps. It's a little harder to kind of like, do you drop someone into your environment for the day, and all the potential risks that has,
Yeah.
So.
And inevitably there's a lot of, organizational, institutional knowledge there. And like, I think there's something to be said about trying to really distill their ability to perform the task in an environment they're comfortable with. To Matt's point, to me, like, we have a S3 bucket module. This was, how hard can it be to create a Terraform S3 bucket, right? Maybe that's an easy example to do. And then, we assigned that as a hazing experiment. No, I'm not kidding. We don't haze, but for developing this module here. And just to go to show, it's taken us so far 66 pull requests to get through this module. The very first pull request here on this module, I think had, 63 comments on it to get this pull request merged the first time. It took well more than 4 hours. How does one scope a task for what we do to something that's achievable and won't get 60 in 4 hours? And I don't even know. Any random ideas here for
we just have again, software development side, but we just have a repeatable one. It never gets merged. It never gets actually it gets PR'd at the end of the day, but never merged. And we just have the same, the person does the same thing every time. And we know how much time that takes, and we've done it ourselves many times.
But then can't they just see the other PRs? You can't.
No, we kill it afterwards. And plus that immersion day thing that we're doing is we're there kind of pair programming with them the whole day. Like we're sitting there on the call with them. So if they really want to cheat on that day, I guess that's a pretty good red flag. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Honestly, I would give like positive points for that. That means that they looked for code that already exists instead of writing code. I'm like, that's +1 in my book.
Yeah, I mean, it's +1 for them, -1 for me, because now you got to come up with another stupid example.
Yeah, see
Yeah.
that doesn't scale. You can't do a brand new exercise for someone every single time. I mean, maybe if you do have the tasks like that are, but they're not going to be equal, and they're not going to be. So that's the hard part to figure out.
Also, I can say this for sure in my past, my past life, that we actually had people do unique tasks on their 1-day things, and that was, but in our backlog, we specifically had things that we would tag with like good interview candidate, thing as we went through. And these were things that we just never got to. They're usually small in scope and whatever. And then what would happen inevitably is most people that would pass the test would then get to actually finish that thing once they got hired, because like they would never get through the whole thing in their interview, but you would get enough sense of does it make sense, and then they got hired, and that was like their first
Interesting.
week or week and a half of work was like finish the task that you were just working on.
That's an interesting thing you're pointing out there. It's almost like a trick question. And it really requires the candidate to start scoping the project. Maybe it shouldn't be to even pass. You can't even finish the task that you ask them. You deliberately give something that is probably too long to take, but they should be able to, they should be communicating, hey, look, the scope on this is actually a lot larger for these reasons, this reason, and that's actually really valuable.
That depends if you're hiring a senior or more junior. You can't not expect that from a junior engineer.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so maybe that's what we're going to be talking about for the next couple weeks or few weeks. I am so challenged. We had a 1-hour call yesterday in terms, how the heck do you hire somebody that I perceive to be mid-level when you've only been working with senior players or mostly senior players? Like, what's a fair assessment for junior or mid-level?
There was a Twitter thread on this actually not too long ago from Corey Quinn. You guys heard of him?
Yep.
He posed a really interesting interview question that has all correct answers, but a junior level answer, a mid-level answer, and a senior level answer. And it made so much sense to me. The question was, we're spending $1 million a month on a Kubernetes cluster. How can we save money on the thing? The junior answer was reserved instances and savings plans. The mid-level answer was, spot instances and scaling and whatever. And the senior level answer was, what the hell do you have running on the thing and what can you get rid of?
Yeah.
And I thought that was really powerful to kind of have a known spectrum of answers for the same question that you're kind of prepared to talk about.
Right. If one does this and then if one issues this to everyone at the company and then go back and kind of retroactively look at the kinds of answers you got and put them on a spectrum, maybe on where they belong. I don't know.
So there's a service called HackerRank that my company's looked at. Has anyone used that before? They have a product called HackerRank Screen, that you can actually set up these kind of evaluation challenges or whatever that are
use that for
equitable.
Yeah. I remember using that for competitions, not necessarily for job interviews.
Marcin, is this the thing you were doing? I know you were pretty competitive on one of these kind of sites or platforms. You're muted if you heard that. All right, move on.
So I've used it a couple different platforms. When a couple years ago when I was interviewing, and some of them were the take-home type. There were a couple of live coding exercises. And I've got HackerRank. We've got HackerRank at Brave, and I put together a couple of tests of what they've got for DevOps. It requires time to manage those. You know, I'm just one guy at this point. So like the scale of, I forget who it was, said, you know, maybe Matt, that, you know, over 100 people, it doesn't scale. But for like me, trying to hire one guy, that doesn't scale either. Just trying to manage those. You can throw something together, but I think I get more out of talking through things. One of the really important points that I got out of my experience interviewing was that the in-person, like live coding things, I'm just not going to do it. I have choked so freaking hard.
Same.
On like sitting with super smart like guys who were, you know, like, so, and like dumb things, you know, like parsing a string in Python, because when your brain goes into that mode, sorry, you just don't have access to it. So I've actually talked to people and been like, yeah, but I'm sorry, I'm just not going to do one of those. I don't think it's blah blah blah. And most organizations have been like, I totally hear you. We absolutely give you the option, like take it home. And one more thing about the take home thing. I found for me, you know, when I'm looking to work with someone, attention to detail and understanding how the smallest stupid ass pedantic freaking details will contribute to automation and make your freaking life a lot easier, you know, down the road. So someone who, like, if they give me a repo where it's in order, you know, there's signs and signals. You know, DevOps is a little bit of a black art. Or a little earlier, I was reminded, I guess, the story Michelangelo was interviewing for the job to do the Sistine Chapel. And he didn't bring anything with him but a pencil. And the guy was like, all right, what's the deal? And he just drew a perfect circle on the wall and got the job. That's it.
Yeah, that was really insightful, Eric. Any other additions on this, or like just one thing when Eric was talking about the hacker rank and done some of these things, I think it'd be kind of interesting if I could go into a service and review a catalog of interview tests or challenges and things like that, but I can pick what I think is suitable for somebody that would work here. And having an opinion, like, okay, so Terraform, do I want to ask every Terraform? No, but I want to go through and see, okay, we should ask that Terraform question, and come up with a custom exam for Cloud Posse, but where I don't have to come up with every, all these ideas and can pull from the library. I think that'd be interesting. Anyone seen anything like that?
No, but it'd be cool if they use the metrics from all the tests that have been taken, somehow like assign them to various like job levels, you know, because all that stuff is in there. And then you could get
hired as senior, hired as junior, kind of.
Yeah. You could be like, no junior guy ever got this, but all the mid guys got it.
Interesting.
I would not to be just always disagreeing with you here, Eric, but you have right now, I know for 100% that you have a list of several thousand ideas of what people could work on for these things, because I've seen the backlog. Like literally, we could go through and groom that backlog and tag probably at least 25% of those things as good interview questions that people could work on.
You're totally right about that. We do have a steady stream of issues, and maybe what one does is one presents a list. Pick from one of these 10.
That's usually how I've done it in the past too. You don't
necessarily. So that's cool too, because then they can also. So not only because I want the opportunity for the candidates to succeed, and they should be able to pick what makes sense to them, and then they'll have the best ability to defend their answer and their work and what they did. It's not just something we shove down their throats, so to say.
Yep, exactly.
At my company, it's slightly different. We're trying to hire as many DevOps / developers as fast as possible. We're doing a policy that's closer to what Eric had suggested, entitled Cut Early. So basically, the candidate needs to be comfortable with development and be comfortable with explaining themselves, but we don't invest a whole lot in the interaction. Whereas it sounded like the technique that Matt and Eric were presenting was cut late, where you're interviewing for an individual to fit in your exact group. Whereas in our case, we're just hiring a whole bunch of random consultants who are all going to be working different teams. Whereas it sounds like the position Matt was advocating was more like hire for an individual for our group. So it's more investment.
Mm. Well, what kind of company are you at? A consulting company, John, or what kind of? Okay, gotcha. That's interesting.
I've seen also
So-
people that they hire like consultant style for like 1 month, and if after 1 month you don't fit, you just stop, and if you fit, then you become full-time.
Right.
Yeah. So I have a little bit of another opinion on this part, like especially if it's FTE roles. You're doing both yourself and your future potential candidates like a real big disservice if you're not thinking through, like if it's just like, well, I'm going to hire someone and if they don't work out after 2 months, then I'm just going to get rid of them. That's like that's really not a fair like position to look at it. I mean, switching a career, particularly in like full-time like employees, is disruptive to your life. It's, you know, something where you change a lot of things. You might have to rearrange childcare things and health insurance and, you know, all these things.
Developers are pets, they're not cats.
Yeah, exactly. So don't just be like, if it doesn't work out, I'll get rid of them in 2 months. You do a better job of finding the right person for that thing. And it also affects your business. Like it's distracting and it takes a lot of time and effort to hire, whether you're doing it rapid fire or you're doing a better job. All of those take a long time. So making the wrong decision also takes a lot longer over time.
Not only that, but you cannot underestimate the amount of damage that a poor developer can do in just a short amount of time.
Yeah. I mean that too, but
you end up spending more time just rewinding problems than getting.
Well, and to the team, like people have to embrace a new person, help ramp them up, and the team will get fatigued with that as well, like over and over again. So there's a lot there to consider.
Yeah, it's going to be a reputational hit too. I mean, this is a pretty small world, and if if this guy that you spit out after 3 weeks or whatever goes to KubeCon and starts talking to people about, man, they did not, they just kind of spit me out like I was cattle. That this is a pretty small world.
Yeah, especially if a lot of people start talking about that.
At the same time, like a lot of companies don't have a nice enough reputation. Like especially dev right now, it's a hot market. Like if your company doesn't have like a higher reputation or doesn't pay like above market salaries, like I don't see why people would spend a lot of energy getting interviewed at your company. So it's a trade-off, because I'm also with Eric's side. I'm totally allergic to like those long assignments, and that's why I'm a consultant, I guess. Just pay me for my work and that's it.
Hey, Cloud Posse needs consultants, and reach out. All right. Well, we are at the end of the hour here. I appreciate everyone's time. This was a really interesting topic for me. And Andy, I feel brain dead stupid. I didn't think about it. So I'm glad we talked about this, and maybe we can brainstorm some ideas for challenges next week or on another office hours. If you haven't subscribed yet to our YouTube channel, I do want to point that out. Go to youtube.com/c/cloudposse. You'll find the back catalog of all of our past office hours, as well as outtakes from some of the best segments that we've had. I bet today's segment on interviewing will be one of them. We also have a number of other resources. Do check out our Slack team. If you haven't subscribed there, go to slack.cloudposse.com. We have almost like 3,800 really talented DevOps asking questions and answering. It's really awesome to be part of. I look forward to talking with everyone same time, same place next week. Go to cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/officehours to register and get a calendar invitation for future sessions. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.